Get out of the
Get
way.
out of the
You're
way!
ruining my shot. The sharp
You're
yell from
ruining my
influencer Tiffany
shot!
Collins made every passenger in first class turn to look. She dragged her eyes down Michael's obese frame before curling her lips into a smirk. Wait a minute. Do you even belong in this VIP section? Even more infuriatingly, instead of reprimanding the influencer whose equipment was cluttering the aisle, the lead flight attendant used a crew decision as an excuse to force Michael and his daughter to give up their VIP seats for economy, even though their tickets were completely valid. Tiffany smirked triumphantly as the large man and his 8-year-old daughter quietly walked away. Little did she know, the person she had just humiliated was about to send her career plunging off a cliff. Exactly 15 minutes later, the intercom echoed through the cabin. The flight was under an emergency pushback halt. Security forces boarded the plane to escort Tiffany and the abusive flight attendant off for investigation, but that was just the opening act for a much larger battle that followed. Have you ever witnessed cruel discrimination just because of someone's appearance? Leave a comment below. That whole downfall started with the quietest of moments. Michael hadn't boarded this flight to flex his wealth or teach anyone a lesson. He was just an exhausted single dad, tightly guiding his 8-year-old daughter down the narrow aisle. The heavy thud of rolling luggage wheels echoed against the plush navy carpet of the first-class cabin as Michael navigated the narrow, crowded aisle. His towering, broad frame barely cleared the overhead bins on either side, forcing him to turn his shoulders slightly at an angle with every step. In one hand, he tightly clutched their printed paper boarding passes. With the other, he gently guided 8-year-old Ava by her small shoulder. Ava walked cautiously ahead of him, her pink sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, her tiny hands hugging a cute backpack embroidered with a rabbit patch. The air inside the cabin was thick, with the scent of roasted coffee beans and expensive leather seats, yet Michael could feel the prickle of sweat forming at the back of his neck under his comfortable gray hoodie. A few steps ahead, the aisle was almost entirely blocked. Tiffany Collins stood near the entrance of row 2, adjusting a sleek aluminum tripod that protruded halfway across the passage. The blinding glare of her ring light illuminated her meticulously styled blonde hair and full makeup, casting harsh artificial shadows across the premium leather seats. She held her smartphone at eye level, pouting at the lens as she narrated her boarding process to thousands of live viewers on her stream. Michael paused, trying to squeeze his oversized body past the narrow gap between the tripod leg and the leather armrest. He pulled Ava closer to his side, whispering softly for her to watch her step. But as he shimmied past, the bulky side of his winter jacket caught the corner of the tripod. The rig wobbled violently. The live video frame jerked sideways, momentarily blurring Tiffany's polished face on screen. Tiffany gasped, snatching the phone off the mount before it could tip over. Her eyes widened into a sharp, venomous glare as she spun around to face him. "Move, you're ruining my shot." Tiffany didn't just look at Michael. She scanned him with deliberate, humiliating slowness. Her phone, encrusted with a sparkling rhinestone case, remained pointed slightly upward, subtly keeping his heavy hoodie in the upper frame of her live stream. Her gaze lingered on his casual jeans, his dark leather boots, and finally his flushed, heavy face. "Wait, do you even belong in first class?" The sharp tones sliced through the quiet luxury of the cabin. Michael instinctively shifted his massive body forward, blocking Ava from the woman's cruel gaze. His large, calloused hand rested firmly over Ava's small shoulder, feeling the slight tremor in her frame. He took a slow breath, swallowing the spike of humiliation that burned in his throat, and reached into his jacket pocket. "We have tickets for 2A and 2B, Michael said quietly, his voice deep and steady despite the tension. He unfolded 2 pristine paper boarding passes, holding them out so the printed seat numbers were clearly visible. "Excuse us, my daughter needs to sit down." Tiffany didn't even glance at the paper. Instead, she let out a theatrical laugh that echoed off the cabin walls, tilting her phone so her chat could see the comment section filling with cruel remarks. She turned her camera slightly, angling it so her online audience could catch the stark contrast between her flashy designer outfit and Michael's simple, unpretentious appearance. "First class isn't just about paying for a ticket, honey. It's about a vibe. Having someone your size blocking the aisle and shaking my professional equipment isn't the experience people pay thousands of dollars for." She adjusted her ring light with a dismissive snap of her wrist, ensuring the camera captured every angle of his reaction for her growing audience. Before Michael could respond, The rustle of a stiff uniform approached from the galley. The lead flight attendant, her hair pinned in a tight, immaculate bun, hurried down the aisle. Her eyes scanned the commotion, but the moment they landed on Tiffany, her stern expression dissolved into a bright, eager smile. Her gold-plated name tag glinted under the cabin lights as she smoothed her navy vest. "Sir, is there a problem here?" the flight attendant asked, her tone instantly hardening as she turned toward Michael. She didn't look at his boarding passes. Instead, she leaned closer to Tiffany, placing a reassuring hand near her shoulder. "Sir, we need to resolve this quickly to avoid delaying the boarding process." Tiffany crossed her arms, instantly adopting a victimized stance. "He bumped into my equipment and threatened my personal space," she said, her voice dropping into a dramatic, fragile pitch. "He's completely blocking the row. How am I supposed to feel comfortable with someone this massive hovering over me?" The flight attendant nodded empathetically, her posture shifting into an icy defensive wall against Michael. She looked him up and down with obvious disdain, taking in his large build and simple clothes. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back immediately and show me your identification and boarding passes again. We take passenger comfort and safety space very seriously." Michael stood motionless in the narrow aisle. He held the tickets out once more, but the flight attendant's cold, judgmental eyes fixed not on the boarding passes, but on the seat directly behind Tiffany, already formulating a ruthless administrative excuse to remove him. The sharp, rhythmic tapping of Tiffany's fingernails against the leather armrest broke the heavy silence of the first-class cabin. She crossed her arms, a smug, arrogant smirk still fixed on her lips as her eyes locked onto Michael. The lead flight attendant stepped forward half a pace, offering a polite smile, but her eyes remained cold and calculating. She glanced down at Michael's paper tickets before speaking in a polished, inflexible tone. "Sir, to ensure order and the overall comfort of our premium passengers, I'm afraid we must ask you to relocate to another seat in economy." Michael raised an eyebrow, his large hand resting gently on Ava's shoulder to keep her calm. "I booked seats 2A and 2B 2 months ago," he replied, his voice deep, remarkably calm, and unwavering. "Our tickets are fully valid and our reservation was confirmed at check-in. May I ask what specific airline policy you are citing to request our relocation?" His response carried no shouting or aggression, yet the sheer authority and composure of a seasoned executive made the flight attendant hesitate for a fraction of a second. She blinked nervously before recovering her icy demeanor. "It is a matter of cabin space management and passenger comfort, sir. The airline reserves the right to reassign seating to ensure a smooth flight experience." Her vague, evasive explanation, disguised as passenger experience, failed to hide the underlying prejudice. Michael tilted his head upward toward the first-class ceiling. High in the corner near the aisle, the small red light of a high-definition security camera blinked silently, recording every flattering gesture of the attendant, every arrogant scoff from Tiffany, and the valid tickets held firmly in his hand. Sensing the flight attendant's momentary hesitation might derail her live broadcast, Tiffany leaned forward, her tone dripping with dismissive contempt. "Oh, come on, lead attendant. Why are you wasting time explaining things to someone like him? Look at his massive size. How are any of us supposed to breathe up here? He's completely threatening my personal space." The flight attendant instantly seized the excuse. She pulled out her company tablet, tapped the screen with a few theatrical swipes, and looked up, all pretense of customer courtesy gone. "Sir, I am officially declaring this a crew decision based on cabin security and comfort standards. Under aviation regulations, crew decisions are final, and we are not obligated to provide further explanation at this time." "Crew decision?" Michael repeated, a sharp glint flickering in his eyes. "You are abusing the term crew decision to cover up physical discrimination and blatant favoritism toward an influencer who is actively violating cabin safety by cluttering the aisle with tripod equipment." "I have done nothing wrong," Michael stated firmly, his words carrying immense weight. "My daughter and I have the legal right to sit in the seats we paid for." Tiffany scoffed loudly, her tone pure malice. "Oh, please, look at yourself, big guy. Everyone knows why she's sending you down. Stop clinging to a place you don't belong, it's embarrassing." The flight attendant took a step closer, her voice shifting into a direct threat. "Sir, if you refuse to comply with a crew decision, I will be forced to notify the captain and call airport security to cite you for interfering with flight crew duties." At that point, you and your daughter will not only lose your seats, but will be blacklisted from the airline. The atmosphere in first class stretched taut like a wire about to snap. Nearby passengers began whispering, their curious and judgmental gazes pinning the father and daughter in place. Michael felt Ava's small hand trembling violently against his jacket. The 8-year-old looked up with wide, terrified eyes, clutching her rabbit backpack against her chest. She whimpered in a shaky voice, "Daddy, please, let's go somewhere else. I'm scared." Seeing the terror in his daughter's eyes broke Michael's heart. His fury at the corrupt, abusive crew did not cloud his judgment as a father and a corporate leader. If he forced a showdown right now, he might win the legal argument, but Ava would be subjected to a traumatic public ordeal, and his undercover audit to gather definitive proof would be compromised. Michael took a deep, deliberate breath, quelling the rage inside him. He offered a gentle smile and leaned down to touch Ava's head. "It's all right, sweetie. Let's head down to the lower cabin where it's quiet." He turned back to the flight attendant and Tiffany, his eyes turning terrifyingly calm. "I will comply with your request for now, not because of your illegal crew decision, but because of my daughter." Michael grabbed Ava's rolling bag, took his daughter's tiny hand in his, and slowly turned to walk down the narrow aisle toward economy. Behind him, Tiffany's victorious giggles and the attendant's eager compliments echoed loudly. Michael did not look back. In his mind, every name, every badge number, and every blatant violation had been recorded into his audit log, a report that would dismantle their careers the moment the plane hit its 15-minute pushback mark. The distance from seat 2A in first class down to row 42 at the very rear of the aircraft felt interminable. Michael ducked his head, carefully navigating Ava past dozens of curious stares from economy passengers. Row 42 sat adjacent to the lavatory and rear galley, where the smell of warmed meals blended with cabin air freshener into a stifling atmosphere. Michael squeezed his heavy frame into the narrow middle seat, placing Ava safely by the window. The abysmal legroom pressed his knees hard against the seatback in front of him, making every movement painful. Yet the broad-shouldered father twisted his torso to the side, ensuring he didn't encroach on his daughter's space. He cradled Ava's bunny backpack in his lap and held her trembling hand. The little girl leaned her forehead against her father's side, her muffled, stifled sobs swallowed by the low roar of the engines preparing for startup. Ava looked up with tear-stained eyes, her tiny lips trembling as she choked out a heartbreaking question. "Daddy, is it because you're too big that they wouldn't let us sit up there? Is it my fault that lady hated us?" Michael felt a sharp stab of grief in his chest. He quickly pulled a clean handkerchief from his jacket, gently wiping the tears from her cheeks. His voice was warm and tender, yet unshakable. "No, my sweet girl. Neither my size nor the clothes we wear will ever define our dignity or worth. We had valid tickets, and no one has the right to strip that away based on appearance or arrogance." He wrapped his massive arms around her, letting her rest her head against his chest where his heart beat steadily. "You did nothing wrong, Ava. Sometimes in life, you meet people who abuse power and look down on others. But remember what I tell you, truth and justice always win. I promise you, no one hurts my daughter without facing the consequences." His broad hand stroked her back until her breathing evened out. Exhausted from the fear and distress, Ava quietly fell asleep against his chest. The moment her eyes closed, the gentle smile faded from Michael's face, replaced by a gaze as cold as surgical steel. Have you ever faced the choice between retaliating immediately or enduring unfairness to protect a child's emotional safety? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Once he was certain Ava was sound asleep, Michael carefully adjusted his posture and pulled his smartphone from his inner jacket pocket. He opened a secure, encrypted messaging app reserved exclusively for the board of directors of the controlling investment fund, the fund holding a 51% controlling stake in the airline. The sharp blue glare of the screen illuminated his hardened expression. Without wasting a single word, his fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard, sending a high-priority executive alert directly to the private phone of the airline's chief executive officer. "I am currently conducting an anonymous audit on Flight 402. First-class cabin crew just abused crew decision authority to evict my daughter and me to economy to accommodate an influencer's live stream setup. Immediately pull and review the first-class HD security footage. Order airport security to board and escort the lead flight attendant and involved parties off the aircraft before pushback. Report back to me within 10 minutes. He attached the lead attendant's badge number, their original row 2A and 2B seat assignment, and the timestamp of the incident. He hit send, the status updated from delivered to read in less than 3 seconds. At corporate headquarters, the highest level of executive command instantly shifted into red alert. Michael slipped his phone away and leaned back into row 4-2, waiting calmly for reckoning to arrive. A sharp, urgent chime echoed through the cabin PA system, cutting through the celebratory mood in first class. The aircraft, which had just begun taxiing backwards for pushback, jerked to an abrupt stop. The hum of the jet engines dropped to a quiet whisper. In row 2, Tiffany was lounge-seated with her legs crossed, eagerly telling her live audience about her victory clearing out the row. She scowled as the captain's voice broke over the speakers. Announcement from the flight deck: Flight 402 pushback has been temporarily halted by executive order from corporate operations and airport security to address a severe procedural violation. The lead flight attendant froze near the galley. Her eager smile vanished, replaced by sudden dread. The cabin door indicators flashed green as the jet bridge reattached itself to the first-class door. The main cabin door swung open. 3 uniformed airport police officers stepped aboard, accompanied by the stern-faced VP of Customer Operations holding an executive tablet displaying high-definition security footage. The VP marched straight to the lead flight attendant, his voice cold and echoing throughout the cabin. "Ma'am, live executive review of the first-class CCTV footage confirms passenger Michael committed 0 safety violations. You grossly abused crew discretion to forcibly reseat paying passengers for an influencer's private live stream." The flight attendant went pale, her knees trembling. Tiffany bolted up from her seat, waving her hands defensively. "Are you insane? I am Tiffany Collins. I have millions of followers. That fat guy was blocking my camera shot." The VP turned to her with unyielding disdain. "Madam, regardless of your follower count, safety standards and passenger rights apply equally. You unlawfully blocked the aisle with equipment, creating a cabin hazard." The lead airport police officer stepped forward, his posture rigid. "Ms. Collins and ma'am, gather your personal belongings and step off the aircraft with us immediately for formal investigation." "What? You're kicking me off?" Tiffany shrieked, her face twisting in rage. "Do you know who I am? I will sue this garbage airline into oblivion. I'm going live right now to expose this abuse." The flight attendant broke down in tears, clumsily unclipping her gold name tag. The officers firmly escorted both women down the aisle past dozens of shocked first-class and economy passengers. As Tiffany was led past row 42, she froze for a split second, glaring with pure malice at Michael, the large man leaning back calmly, holding his sleeping daughter. She gritted her teeth, silently vowing to burn his life down using her social media influence. Once Tiffany and the attendant were escorted onto the jet bridge, the VP walked down to row 42. In front of the entire economy section, he bowed deeply to Michael. "Mr. Chairman, Mr. Michael, on behalf of the executive board, I sincerely apologize for this appalling breakdown in service. Please allow us to escort you and your daughter back to first class." Gasps rippled through economy. Michael waved a calm hand. "My daughter is sleeping. Do not wake her. Keep the flight on schedule so other passengers aren't delayed. We will finalize the audit report after landing." The VP nodded respectfully. The chime signaled departure readiness, and Flight 402 lifted into the sky to a round of quiet applause. Meanwhile, inside the airport terminal, Tiffany stomped her feet in rage, opening her video editor to cut a misleading smear clip that would ignite a viral storm. The frantic clacking of acrylic nails against a touchscreen echoed in the corner of the airport's VIP lounge. Tiffany sat huddled in a plush chair, gritting her teeth as her fingers flew across her video editing app. She meticulously cropped out the footage of her loudly demanding compliance, completely erasing the massive tripod that had unlawfully blocked the aisle. Under her manipulative fingers, the narrative shifted. The edited video now only showed Michael's large frame bumping into her equipment, his stern expression as he spoke back to the flight crew, and the sight of the father and daughter trudging toward the back of the plane like reprimanded criminals. She applied a dark, moody filter, overlaid a tragic backing track, and made sure to zoom in on her own fabricated expression of sheer terror. With a triumphant smirk, she typed out a tear-jerking, sensationalized caption: "Attacked and threatened by an aggressive man on my flight. The airline had to escort me off just to protect him." She hit the publish button across all her platforms, whispering with a sneer, Let's see how you handle 3 million angry fans. Within 20 minutes, the heavily doctored video went viral, spreading like a malicious digital plague. Thousands of shares and furious comments began bombarding social media feeds. In the comment sections, an anonymous mob unleashed their wrath, targeting Michael with the most ruthless body-shaming insults imaginable. One look at his obese figure and you know he's a creep. No wonder he had to sit by the toilets at the back. Is the airline insane for prioritizing a guy like that over Tiffany? The toxicity didn't stop there. Overzealous fans began using reverse image searches to dig up the identity of the man in the clip. They screenshotted blurry moments of little Ava, shrinking back in fear behind her father, spreading the images alongside vicious, mocking remarks. The social media algorithm had inadvertently become the perfect weapon for Tiffany to exercise her virtual power, slowly crushing a family's peace and dignity, all because a father refused to bow to her entitlement. The screech of airplane tires kissing the tarmac signaled that Flight 402 had landed safely. Inside the cabin, Michael gently unbuckled his seatbelt, carefully holding a still drowsy Ava in his arms. Unlike the tense atmosphere during boarding, the surrounding passengers now looked at him with quiet respect, parting the way for the father and daughter to disembark first. He smiled with a sense of relief, assuming the dreadful incident was entirely behind them. But the moment his phone reconnected to the cellular network, a barrage of emergency notification chimes erupted. Dozens of emails and frantic texts from his personal secretary, his PR director, and the investment fund's executive board flooded the screen. The device glowed with red alerts. Frowning, Michael opened the most recent message from his PR director, Mr. Chairman, a heavily doctored smear video of you's going viral. Worse, they exposed Ava's face and are attacking her with horrendous comments. Michael's thumb froze hovering over the screen. His eyes darkened, turning as cold as glacial ice. He didn't care about being insulted, but dragging his innocent daughter's face into the public arena for an anonymous mob to mock was an unforgivable red line. The media storm had truly begun, and he knew his silence was no longer an option. The distant honking of morning traffic drifted into the quiet kitchen where Michael was preparing breakfast for his daughter. Outside, the morning sun was bright, but in the digital world, an exponential storm was raging. Michael hadn't slept a wink. He had spent the entire night on secure lines with the investment fund's elite legal team, ordering the immediate preservation of all security footage and flight records from Flight 402. Yet, in front of Ava, he maintained his usual warm smile, carefully tying her shoelaces and driving her to school. He wanted to preserve his daughter's innocent world as much as possible. As his SUV pulled up to the elementary school gates, Michael gave Ava a tight hug, reminding her to listen to her teachers. He stood watching her small silhouette disappear behind the iron gates, reassuring himself that he would dismantle this crisis quietly at the corporate level without letting it touch her life. But he had severely underestimated the cruelty and contagious speed of cyberbullying. Malicious giggles and harsh whispers rippled across the schoolyard during the lunch recess. Ava was quietly drawing at a stone table when a group of older students surrounded her. One of them held up a smartphone, playing Tiffany's heavily edited clip on a loop. "Look, that's the daughter of the fat guy who got kicked off the plane." A shrill, mocking voice echoed. The children, regurgitating the toxic narratives they had absorbed from social media and their parents, began hurling hurtful insults at the 8-year-old girl. They mimicked Michael's large stature, echoing the body-shaming comments that were trending online. Ava's eyes widened in sheer panic, her sketchbook tumbling to the dirt. "My dad didn't do anything wrong. He had a ticket," she sobbed, trying to defend him. But the fragile voice of a child was entirely drowned out by the merciless laughter of the manipulated mob. Social media had successfully bled its virtual toxicity into the real world, turning an innocent child into a victim of schoolyard bullying. Exactly an hour later, Michael's tires screeched against the pavement outside the school. He had been in the middle of an emergency board meeting when the homeroom teacher called. When Michael pushed open the door to the school nurse's office, his heart shattered. Ava was curled up on a small white cot, her shoulders trembling, her eyes swollen from crying. Seeing him, she launched herself into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Daddy, they said you were a bad man. They said you got thrown out. You're not a bad man, right?" Michael dropped to one knee, wrapping his massive arms around her shaking body. His large hand gently stroked her hair, but his eyes darkened, radiating an aura of chilling, executive resolve. He had always tried to teach his daughter tolerance and patience, but the world had just proven that sometimes silence only emboldened the wicked. "I'm not a bad man, sweetheart," Michael whispered, his deep voice as steady as forged steel. "And I promise you, I'm going to show the whole world the truth. I will never let anyone bully you or our family again." He picked his daughter up and carried her out of the school. It was time for the chairman to drop the hammer, ready to crush their illusion of power with the absolute weight of the truth and the law. The heavy glass doors slid open with a sharp mechanical swoosh at the airline's corporate headquarters. At exactly 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Michael strode into the grand lobby. Gone was the unassuming father in a casual t-shirt from yesterday. Today he wore a sharply tailored charcoal gray power suit. His massive frame no longer looked like an easy target. Instead, it radiated the overwhelming, commanding presence of an apex executive. Flanking him was a small army of elite corporate lawyers in dark suits, walking in synchronized, intimidating silence. In the penthouse boardroom, the airline's CEO and the entire executive board were already sweating bullets. When Michael entered, every single person scrambled to their feet, bowing respectfully. The CEO stammered a frantic apology regarding the crew's gross abuse of power, but Michael simply raised a single finger, instantly plunging the room into dead silence. "I am not here for your apologies," he stated coldly, taking the chairman's seat at the head of the table. "I am here to purge the rot from this company, starting with dismantling the lies currently tearing up the internet." The cold, harsh glare of the projector illuminated the pale, tense faces of the board members. On the massive LED screen, the unedited 4K security footage extracted directly from the first-class cabin's ceiling camera played. Completely contradicting Tiffany's maliciously cropped video, the objective wide-angle lens revealed the undeniable truth. Her tripod was haphazardly deployed across the aisle like an intentional barricade. It clearly showed Michael politely and carefully attempting to bypass it, his arms protectively shielding his young daughter from the clutter. The security system's audio also captured crystal-clear recordings of the lead flight attendant weaponizing the term crew decision to forcefully eject a compliant passenger. "Archive and seal all of this with legal signatures," Michael ordered, his deep voice slicing through the silent boardroom. "This is the execution warrant for those who use social media algorithms to turn lies into reality." The PR director nervously stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mr. Chairman, we can issue an immediate press release to correct the narrative and demand a takedown of her defamatory video." "No," Michael cut him off, his eyes glinting with razor-sharp intensity. "A simple online correction is too cheap a price for my daughter's tears. We are holding an emergency press conference tomorrow at 9 a.m. Invite every major news network and broadcasting station in the country." He turned to his lead counsel, a cold, calculated smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Send a personalized VIP invitation to Tiffany Collins. Tell her the airline is deeply remorseful and wishes to host a public apology ceremony for the affected passenger representative. Let her confidently walk right into her own trap while the whole world is watching." The relentless clicking of camera shutters echoed throughout the grand hall of the conference center. It was exactly 9 in the morning. Dozens of television cameras and hundreds of journalists had packed the auditorium. Tiffany Collins strode through the main double doors wearing an elegant, understated black dress, purposefully employing vulnerable victim makeup while still radiating an air of haughty arrogance. She waved graciously at the press, forcing a practiced, calculated smile. In her mind, today's event was the absolute pinnacle of social media power, a massive, multi-billion-dollar airline bending the knee to hold a public press conference just to apologize to her for yesterday's incident. A swarm of reporters immediately rushed forward, thrusting microphones into her face. "Ms. Collins, how do you feel about the airline taking initiative to apologize?" one journalist asked. Tiffany blinked slowly, squeezing out a perfectly timed artificial tear. "I deeply appreciate their swift action," she replied with a faux trembling voice. "No one deserves to be harassed and threatened by an aggressive man, and I trust the airline will impose strict consequences on the individual who attacked me." She confidently walked to the front row reserved for VIPs, crossing her legs arrogantly as she waited for the PR director to take the stage and grovel. Pulling out her phone, she started a live stream to broadcast her imminent victory to millions of eagerly waiting followers. A sharp, piercing screech of microphone feedback instantly sliced through the noisy auditorium. The massive oak doors behind the podium slowly opened. However, the person who emerged was not the nervous PR director or the sweating CEO. A towering, heavily built man wearing an impeccably tailored, cold gray power suit took long, authoritative strides toward the center microphone. The entire auditorium instantly fell dead silent. The journalists exchanged confused glances, having no idea who this imposing figure was. But Tiffany recognized him immediately. The triumphant smirk on her face completely froze. The smartphone she was holding to live stream began to shake uncontrollably in her hand. That's the fat guy from the plane," she whispered in sheer panic, her eyes widening in pure disbelief. Why was he here? Why was he standing at the highest podium? Michael adjusted the microphone, his sharp, icy gaze sweeping across the entire room before locking directly onto Tiffany. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen." His deep, commanding voice resonated through the speakers. "My name is Michael Hayes. You might know me from a highly edited video currently storming social media. But today I am not standing here as an insulted, humiliated passenger. I stand before you as the chairman of the board, the majority shareholder holding a 51% controlling stake in this airline." The auditorium erupted into a frenzy of shocked gasps and frantic whispering. Tiffany's heart plummeted straight into her stomach. The overhead lights in the hall suddenly dimmed, plunging the room into darkness as the massive LED screen behind Michael roared to life. Yesterday, Ms. Collins showed the world a heavily manipulated perspective so she could play the victim, Michael stated, his ironclad voice cutting through the tension. Today, I will show you the unvarnished truth. The screen began playing the unedited 4K security footage extracted directly from the first-class cabin's ceiling camera. There were no dark filters, no tragic background music, only a clear, razor-sharp, objective reality. Hundreds of reporters held their breath, watching intently. The footage blatantly showed Tiffany's massive tripod sprawling across the aisle, completely barricading the walkway. It vividly displayed Michael politely and carefully trying to squeeze past, his large arms protectively shielding little Ava from the cluttered equipment, while Tiffany continuously shrieked insults at them. Furthermore, the high-definition security audio captured every arrogant word from the lead flight attendant as she unlawfully weaponized the term crew decision to force a compliant, ticketed passenger out of his seat. The naked truth instantly flipped the room's atmosphere. Furious murmurs and critical glares were now directed entirely at Tiffany. Her live stream chat exploded with thousands of angry comments from her own followers who suddenly realized they had been maliciously manipulated. "You purposefully chose a restricted camera angle to defame a father who was simply protecting his daughter," Michael declared coldly, his eyes pinning a trembling, shrinking Tiffany to her VIP chair. Michael gestured for his lead counsel to step forward, dropping a thick stack of legal documents onto the podium with a heavy thud. "As chairman, I am officially announcing the results of our internal investigation," Michael proclaimed loudly. "First, the lead flight attendant and the personnel who enabled this gross abuse of power have been terminated immediately without severance, and they will be permanently stripped of their flight service licenses. Second, on behalf of the airline, we are placing Ms. Tiffany Collins on a permanent lifetime no-fly list across our entire domestic and international network." Tiffany gasped loudly, genuine tears ruining her perfect makeup as they streamed down her face. She tried to stand up in protest, but her legs felt like jelly, refusing to support her. Michael wasn't finished. He leaned closer to the microphone, emphasizing every word with the fierce protective instinct of a father. "Finally, as a father whose 8-year-old daughter was dragged into the public spotlight to endure vicious cyberbullying, my personal legal team has officially filed a lawsuit against Ms. Tiffany Collins for defamation, libel, and violating a minor's privacy. We will be seeking millions of dollars in damages, and I promise you, I will relentlessly pursue this case until your virtual empire collapses entirely." A stunned silence enveloped the room before dozens of reporters erupted into thunderous applause, marking a spectacular takedown driven by the absolute power of truth and the law. Just hours after the explosive press conference, a ruthless domino effect began wiping out the entire digital empire Tiffany Collins had meticulously built. High-end fashion brands and cosmetics companies that once sponsored her immediately issued statements terminating their lucrative contracts, refusing to associate their businesses with an individual exposed for body shaming and bullying a child. Tiffany's social media accounts, once boasting millions of followers, were flooded with hundreds of thousands of furious, condemnatory comments, forcing her to deactivate all her profiles entirely. Stripped of her influencer status, she now faced a multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuit, a catastrophic financial burden that guaranteed her total bankruptcy. Meanwhile, at the airport terminal, the corrupt lead flight attendant walked out the sliding doors clutching a small cardboard box filled with her personal belongings. She wept uncontrollably, permanently stripped of her flight wings and her entire career, all because she had compromised her integrity to appease a minor celebrity and abused procedural power. Both women had learned a brutally bitter lesson: virtual clout and bureaucratic loopholes could never defeat the glaring light of absolute truth. As the chairman of the controlling investment fund, Michael didn't just stop at punishing the wrongdoers, he actively restored structural justice across the entire airline. That very afternoon, he signed a sweeping corporate resolution implementing stringent oversight protocols for the term crew decision, ensuring that no paying passenger could ever be arbitrarily bullied out of their seat under the false guise of flight safety. He also directly ordered the executive board to send personalized apology letters, accompanied by a 100% full refund policy for every single passenger who had been on board Flight 402's first class and economy cabins that day. In addition, each passenger received a complimentary free upgrade voucher for their next trip as a token of gratitude for their patience during the disruption. To Michael, destroying the wicked was only one half of justice; the other half was compensating the innocent bystanders. His decisive and deeply empathetic actions were met with thunderous public applause, causing the airline's stock prices to immediately surge upward. As evening fell, Michael stepped out of his sleek SUV and unlocked the front door of his home. He took off his heavily tailored, authoritative gray suit jacket, loosened his silk tie, and transformed back into the large, unassuming man in his familiar, comfortable t-shirt. The immense, suffocating pressures of the corporate boardroom seemed to evaporate entirely the moment he laid eyes on little Ava sitting on the living room rug. She was completely absorbed in coloring a drawing of a father and daughter, holding hands and smiling under a bright yellow sun. Seeing him walk in, Ava dropped her crayons and sprinted across the room, wrapping her small arms around his large waist. "Daddy, I saw you on TV today. You looked so cool." She beamed, her bright eyes completely devoid of yesterday's trauma. Michael let out a deep, rumbling laugh, lifting his daughter high into the air. In that pure, quiet moment, he wasn't a ruthless billionaire chairman, nor was he the man who had just crushed a media empire. He was simply a father who would silently endure any insult directed at himself, but who would erupt like a volcano to protect his daughter's smile. Dinner that night was wonderfully peaceful. Sitting at their small kitchen table, Michael gently served Ava her favorite roasted meats, listening intently as she happily babbled about her school day. The warm golden glow of the pendant lights illuminated their faces, painting a perfect, flawless picture of familial love. Their lives had returned to a quiet, steady orbit, but their story had sent a powerful, echoing message to the world. Never judge a father's character, depth, or position simply by his unassuming appearance or his large stature. And most importantly, true power does not reside in superficial follower counts or flashy job titles. Power only holds genuine value when it is wielded to serve justice and protect the people we love.